Hvitsten, Vestby, land of artists, tourists and bathing. But there's so much more. The town likely holds the Norwegian record for the number of sculptures on public display in a small downtown area. All the sculptures belong to one of the ships of Hvitsten shipping company, Fred.Olsen and Company. Braque. Here are the seabirds on the southern boathouse on the Hvitsten docks. A decoration that adorned the ship Braque, sculptured by Sigurd Gnome. Bergland. Do you remember the old yellow paper 10-kroner note depicting a fisherman? It was designed by Niels Flagstad, who also made this figurehead.
Fartøyet het Borgland, og dette prefikset Borg, det har vært og er fortsatt i bruk i Olserederiet, og bakgrunnen er at gamle Fred, hans eldste sønn, Petter, som døde ung, han rakk før han døde å grunnlegge sitt eget rederi, og brukte da prefikset Borg.
The reason was that Pater was deeply in love with the singer Borghaug Langard and wanted to name a ship after her. His father, Fred, intervened and told him he couldn't name a ship after some childish romance. So he had to come up with something else. Pater reconsidered and named the ship Borgilla instead. Bomber. Bomber has a unique story behind it. Bomber was in Mold when the Germans came in 1940. They wanted to take the ship, but the skipper cast off and they travelled up the fjords, using bushes for camouflage. Eventually they were able to sneak out into the Atlantic. There they quickly met an unmarked submarine. The crew thought they were going to get torpedoed, but out of the tower came a guy who called out to Bomber in Norwegian, "Where you headed?" "To England," they answered. It was a Norwegian seaman on an English submarine, so somehow they got away. And later it would be Bomber who moved the Norwegian Central Bank's gold from England to the USA during the war. Batan. Thomas Olsen, the Hvitsten ship owner in the previous generation, liked America. He wished to praise the Americans' activities at Batan during the last World War by naming his ship after the peninsula. Ornulf Bast made this figure of a young inhabitant of Batan with wreaths of flowers. Bosporus. Bosporus is the strait between Europe and Asia by Istanbul in Turkey. You could think the two women in the figurehead represent the two sides of the world, but this is not the case. They represent the trade between the North and the Mediterranean, exchanging fruit and wood. This can be seen in the orange and pine branches they are holding in their hands, as sculpted by Raymond Isern. Bulette. Bulette was the mother of the ship owner and the company founder, old Fred.Olsen. And her B for Bulette is the reason nearly all other Olsen ships were given names starting with a B. The engine tanker Bulette was a giant ship for its time in the 1950s, weighing a massive 24,000 tons. The female figure in the sculpture is rising out of a shell. One can imagine that Ornulf Bast had Botticelli's Birth of Venus in mind when he designed it. Black Prince I. The artist has made an error in the iconography of Black Prince I's figurehead. There are horses in the sculpture, and horses were an ill omen at sea. Bourgogne. Carrie Orand made this sculpture. The woman is holding bottles in her hands. This is because the ship is named after the winemaking district by the same name. Perhaps the ship also transported such products. Borealis. A fruit transport ship built for Mediterranean travel, made by Gunnar Jansen. Bruin. Skolvagsvik is known for animal sculptures. Bruin is one of 3 bear sculptures in Fred.Olsen's Figurehead collection. Bruin is Scots for bear and depicts North Sea travel. Bismillah. Each chapter of the Quran opens with this word, which means in the name of God. It's hard to say what sculptor Grimeland was thinking when he made this, but it is unique. Grimeland also has a famous sculpture at Oslo City Hall. Berwick. Berwick is named after a town far to the north on the east coast of England. The sculpture depicts King Neptune, a stately figure for a transport ship working in the North Sea. Braque. Reliefs with Scottish motifs are the decoration of choice for the passenger ship Braque, made by Per Hurum. However, Per Hurum is most famous for his statue of Christian Krogh, which is seated at Stortingsplatz in Oslo. Bolinus. Arnold Hokkeland is most famous for his later non-figurative work from the 1990s. This is an example of his earlier figurative period. Hokkeland has also produced sculptures for the Nidarosdomen Cathedral in Trondheim. It depicts a dancer holding a shawl between her hands. Bolinus travelled much along the west coast of the USA. Bolivar. This is Bolivar's figurehead. It was a ship of misfortune for the Olsen Shipping Company. A fire broke out while it was being equipped at the Akers Mechanist shipyard in Oslo, so the ship never fell under German command. It was repaired after the war, but ran into a storm on its maiden voyage from South America and was wrecked. Bolivar was the South American liberator who broke the control Spain had over several countries on the South American continent.
Da denne statuen ble foreslått plassert her, så protesterte menighetsrådet. De ville ikke ha en så dominerende figur tett opp i kirkebygget. Men så ble det gjort en såkalt hestehandel. Skipsrederen spanderte vannklosett på kirken, og dermed fikk Bolivar stå hvor vi ser ham i dag.
Bisans. A beautiful sculpture by Alfred Seland. He wasn't very prolific, but many know his Albertine sculpture at Oslo City Hall. The fruit baskets show us the ship's cargo, which travelled from the Mediterranean to the north. She has a hat that resembles the ones worn by the fruit pickers. Braque. A beautiful sculpture by Grimeland. Grimeland also has a far more famous sculpture at Oslo City Hall, which stands over the door in the City Hall courtyard. Bastant. This is Niels Aas's only contribution to the Olsen Shipping Company's ships. A fair figure in the sea breeze, draped in a thin dress. Aas claimed his finest work was a horse he made out of snow as a young boy. Obviously, that one is gone now. Many associate Aas with the sculpture of King Haakon VII on the 7th of June place in Oslo. Bærby. One can wonder why the ship was given this name. Bærby is a farm in Østfold. The ship was built in the Østfold city of Moss, and this may have been the reason. Bast used his young son as the model for this lovely sculpture. He is carrying some fishing equipment. Braque. This sculpture by artist Georges Braque might be saying something about the shipping company family's relationship with the arts. The current Fred.Olsen wanted to be a painter instead of a ship owner. We could say it's fortunate he chose to become a ship owner. Bamse. A great bear's head-butting its way through the seas. Ernulf Bast made nearly 20 figureheads for the Olsen shipping companies. B.J. There were 3 bear ships. Breeze. Another fruit cargo ship with a woman carrying a large basket on her head. Per Palle Storm made all the worker sculptures at the City Hall stairs in Oslo, a very major public work.
Jeg har vært inne på det før at det er ikke alltid så lett å se symbolikken bak navnevalget på fartøyer og gallionsfigurer. Og her har vi jo et av de besynderligste eksemplene. Jeg ble så nysgjerrig på det at jeg tok kontakt med Løffler, da levde han fortsatt. Og han fortalte at ja, han ble litt berørt av det der, han syntes det var et rart valg han også. Men i de årene var jeg helt betatt av Per Høst og samejakke, sa han, og det måtte ut. Og så valgte han den samen. Løffler var ungarer og hadde noe kunstutdannelse fra Budapest da han flyktet til Norge like etter krigen, og ble vel nærmest ansatt av Bast som assistent. Og her har vi Bast igjen, de yndige små figurene som er fra Bremar. Det er jo ikke gallionsfigurer, de har smykket skottene utvendig på fartøyet. Men den figuren der, det er fra akterskipet på Black Prince. Black Prince lå i Trondheimsfjorden da tyskerne kom, og skipet ble jo da umiddelbart beslaglagt og brukt som kaserne for ubåtmannskaper for tyskerne. Og flyttet hit og dit, blant annet i Danzig, og der ble den bombet av de allierte. Så Black Prince ble veldig destruert. De slepte vraket ut i Østersjøen, hvor Black Prince tjente som øvelsesmål for skyttere i det tyske flyvåpenet. Og ble jo ytterligere maltraktert, og så ble den slept til nord for Sjælland, hvor den ble lagt ned som bølgebryter.
Bura, a fantastic figure by Kjell Rasmussen. Its windswept hair looked particularly good at the bow of a cargo ship, which was active on the west coast of Canada and the USA. Blenheim. The ship was named after Blenheim, the palace of the Count of Marlborough in England. Winston Churchill was born in the same palace as the Count's grandchild. The ship was a passenger ship that travelled between Oslo and England. Bulkis. Like many other ships, Bulkis served in the Mediterranean. Bulkis was the old name for the Queen of Saba, who visited King David in Israel. This is from the Old Testament. Bayard. Bayard has been a lucky name at the Olsen Shipping Company. There were many Bayards. This is probably number 6. It likely started when the first generation Olsen bought a sailing ship by that name. He is regarded as a knight without fear and beyond reproach. Bonanza. Bonanza mostly sailed along the west coast of the USA. That might be the reason for this great native chieftain. Perhaps Nome wanted to make a tribute to the Native American population this way. Bonanza means sudden great fortune.
Og dette er også en av de vakreste gallionsfigurene i hele samlingen. Den er fra Black Prince, som var bygget i 66, og gallionsfiguren er gjort av Kjell Rasmussen, altså sønn av skulpturprofessoren. Modellen er danserinnen Hanne Skram. Jeg var skipslege på Black Prince en kort periode, så jeg har jo litt forhold til den på den måten. Den er ganske nylig solgt, men de fikk i hvert fall berget gallionsfiguren før den forsvant.
Breda. This great seabird was made by Dagfinn Werenskiold. His father, the great adventure illustrator Eric T. Werenskiold, was more famous than Dagfinn in his time, and his father raised him strictly. Dagfinn is said to have said this once, "Sometimes I wish my name was Berg and I was a mail courier." Dagfinn Werenskiold is best known for making the bronze doors at the Oslo Cathedral. Bolt. The young woman with braids stands and looks out over the Oslo fjord by the beach at Hvitsten. She was the figurehead of the cargo ship Bolt, which sailed the North Sea.